The rusted gates of Greenhaven Airport groaned open, revealing a scene frozen in time. Weeds sprouted through cracks in the tarmac, reclaiming the space for nature. The main terminal building stood desolate, windows boarded up, paint peeling like sunburnt skin. Eck as Eck. Eck parked his Jeep near the skeletal remains of what was once a bustling terminal entrance. Stepping out, he felt a prickle of unease. The silence was absolute, broken only by the whisper of the wind through the tall grass that now carpeted the runway. He approached the terminal cautiously, each step echoing in the stillness. Graffiti marred the walls, faded and weather-beaten. Eck as Eck. As he walked towards the hangar where the jet was supposedly housed, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Eck dismissed it as a trick of the light, but a knot of unease tightened in his gut. The hangar doors creaked open, revealing the sleek silver silhouette of the private jet. Eck as Eck. As Eck approached, running his hand over the smooth fuselage, he thought he heard a faint whisper, carried on the breeze. He paused, listening intently, but there was only the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of a bird. He shook off the unease and set about his work, inspecting the jet for any damage after years of sitting idle. The engines, surprisingly, hummed to life with a roar that shattered the oppressive silence. Eck took it for a test flight, circling the overgrown landing strip, the wind whipping through the open cockpit. Eck as Eck. Back on the ground, he decided to explore the terminal building. The silence inside was heavier, filled with a strange pressure that made his ears pop. As he walked through the deserted waiting area, he heard it again. Eck as Eck. Eck stopped, his heart pounding in his chest. Nightfall descended, casting an eerie glow over the abandoned airport. Eck, unable to fly the jet out until morning, decided to bunk down in the old office he'd discovered near the hangar. It was sparsely furnished, with a dusty desk, a creaking chair, and a moth-eaten couch. Eck as Eck. The silence was deeper now, punctuated by the occasional screech of an owl or the rustling of some unseen creature in the undergrowth outside. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, taking on menacing shapes in the flickering lamplight. He tried to read a book he'd brought, but the words swam before his eyes. Eck as Eck. Once, he could have sworn he saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway, a tall, gaunt silhouette barely discernible in the darkness. He blinked, and it was gone. He told himself it was just his imagination, fueled by the spooky stories he'd heard about the airport. But deep down, a primal fear gnawed at him. He stumbled upon a box in the corner, its contents spilling out. He picked up a faded photograph, its edges brittle with time. It showed smiling airport workers. As my eyes adjusted, I saw rows of rusted filing cabinets. The basement was a labyrinth of forgotten paperwork. A musty smell wafted up, sending a shiver down his spine. I noticed a door hidden behind debris. With a deep breath, I pried open the heavy wooden door.
As I delved deeper into the box's contents, a chilling realization dawned on me. The photographs, the letters, the newspaper clippings, they all pointed to a horrifying truth. The flood that had devastated Greenhaven Airport a decade ago hadn't just claimed the building. It had claimed the lives of the people who worked there. The workers, trapped by the rising waters, had vanished without a trace. Their bodies never recovered.
Newspaper clippings detailed the frantic search efforts, the dwindling hope as days turned into weeks. Letters, penned by grieving families, spoke of unanswered questions, of loved ones lost too soon.
Among the documents, I found a logbook, its pages warped and water-stained. The final entry, scrawled in hurried handwriting, sent chills down my spine. It spoke of the floodwaters rising with terrifying speed, of frantic calls for help met with only the roar of the deluge. The last line, barely legible, read, "The shadows are coming." I spent the rest of the night poring over the documents, piecing together the events of that fateful night. The flood, caused by a freak storm surge, had hit Greenhaven Airport with terrifying speed. Workers, trapped inside the terminal building, had scrambled to higher ground, but the relentless waters had quickly engulfed the entire structure.
The logbook spoke of a desperate struggle for survival, of dwindling supplies and rising panic. The airport's emergency exits had malfunctioned, trapping the workers inside their watery tomb.
One entry, chilling in its detail, described the shadows taking on more defined shapes, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. The writer spoke of feeling a cold dread, a sense of overwhelming despair as the water continued to rise. The final entry ended abruptly, as if the writer had been interrupted mid-sentence.
Eck could only imagine the terror that must have gripped the workers in their final moments. Trapped, drowning, surrounded by the unseen horrors that seemed to have been unleashed by the floodwaters. As dawn broke over the desolate airport, Eck felt a profound sadness and determination to help the trapped spirits. He drove to the nearby town, seeking out Father Michael.
The flood at Greenhaven was a terrible tragedy. Many souls were lost that night.
Father Michael agreed to help Eck, providing him with candles, incense, and holy water. He also gave him a small silver crucifix, its surface worn smooth with age. Armed with Father Michael's guidance, Eck returned to the abandoned airport. The air hung heavy, thick with anticipation. The silence felt charged with unseen energy. He went down into the basement, back to the place where he had discovered their stories.
"I know you are here. I have learned of your suffering. I cannot undo the past, but I can offer you peace. Cross over into the light. You are not alone."
Following Father Michael's instructions, Eck began the ritual. He chanted the prayers for the departed, his voice a steady rhythm in the oppressive silence. He sprinkled holy water, its droplets sparkling like tiny diamonds in the candlelight. As the ritual progressed, the atmosphere in the basement shifted. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. The air, once thick with sadness and fear, began to clear. The shadows that had danced at the edge of his vision receded, their forms becoming less distinct. The silver crucifix in his hand grew warm, pulsing with a soft, comforting light. He could feel the presence of the spirits drawing closer, not with menace, but with a sense of longing, of gratitude. They were weary, their souls exhausted from their long vigil. As the last echoes of the ritual faded, a profound silence descended upon the basement. The candles flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. But it was a peaceful darkness, devoid of the fear and sorrow that had clung to it for so long. The air was still, yet it no longer felt heavy or oppressive. Eck stood for a long moment, his heart pounding in his chest. He could sense the presence of the spirits, but they were different now. No longer trapped, no longer defined by their suffering. They were at peace, their souls finally free to move on. He emerged from the basement, blinking in the bright sunlight. The abandoned airport seemed different too. The air felt lighter, the silence no longer oppressive, but serene.